All right, it's week 4 of the fantasy football season, and after a brutal week for our kickers out there, it's time for your weekly reminder that kickers are still people too. I'm ranking all 32 starting kickers for week 4 of the fantasy football season. Let's hop right on into it. All right, first up, it is our favorite category, your stardom every week, and we're gonna have some changes this week. Fairbairn of the Houston Texans, not really his own fault, but this Texans offense is just so bad. So we're going to throw him back into the pile here. Spencer Schrader did finally miss one for the Colts. Missed it from 50 plus. Now it's his first miss, even though he did miss the 60-yarder. So he does struggle a bit from distance, but this is your kicker one on the season. The Colts are good, apparently. So throw in my man Schrader here into the stardom every week, joining Jake Elliott of the Philadelphia Eagles, Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs, Jake Bates of the Detroit Lions, Brandon Aubrey of the Dallas Cowboys, Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cameron Dicker, the kicker of the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay, first up, Tyler Loop of the Baltimore Ravens, and he has had a really good season to start. Now, he did, I think, miss that field goal Monday night against Detroit, but they gave it to him, so it counts for him. And Loop's done a great job replacing Justin Tucker. This is also one of the best offenses in football. They're going to Kansas City now in a must-win spot for this team. And Kansas City's defense is still pretty good, but this Baltimore offense is a unit. Field goals are going to be at a premium this game, I think. So we could see several field goal attempts. Lots of moving of the football. Give me Tyler Loop. I love this matchup for week 4. I think he's going to have a big week. Going to have to make some big kicks for the Ravens to avoid going 1-3. Brandon McManus of the Green Bay Packers going to Dallas to take on the Cowboys, and this is one of the worst defenses in football. They've made Russell Wilson look like a Hall of Famer again. Caleb Williams with the greatest game of his career. Now in comes Jordan Love after a complete stinker in this Packers offense, getting dominated by the Browns. I love McManus this week, potentially a little bit lower ceiling because the Packers may be scoring 7s and not 3, but we might be kicking a hell of a lot of extra points this week in Dallas on Sunday Night Football. And it's indoors, good place to kick field goals. Could be a real kicker show here against Brandon Aubrey. They might trot McManus out there to go some 50 plus out there just to make them feel good. So I'm loving Brandon McManus this week as well on Sunday Night Football. Okay, Cam Little of the Jacksonville Jaguars going to the San Francisco 49ers. So they're taking on the Niners. Niners defense has been very good this season. Now, Nick Bosa out. That's going to weaken that defense a good bit. But this Jags offense has not been good, man. There's been no sort of cohesion, no sort of consistency. They're winning football games, but they're winning them ugly, which is good for us. That means field goal attempts could be coming up a lot. But I just think this Niners defense is really good. Could be a weird week out in San Francisco for Jacksonville. This could be like a 10-point game for them again. So I'm going to say Cam Little's a fine start. He's a very reliable kicker. Really hasn't shown off the distance yet in the regular season like we saw from him in the preseason. Just don't necessarily trust this Jaguars offense against a pretty good San Francisco defense. We'll see what they look like without Nick Bosa. Cam Little, a guy that you have no problem starting. Don't really expect a super high ceiling from him this week, though. All right, next up, my guy, Will the Thrill Reichard. Been one of the best kickers in the league since getting drafted last year, and he's been excellent this season. Career long last week, 62 yards against the Bengals. Now everything seemed to be going right. Now they're heading to Dublin to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, our international game, and that Ireland field was not good with what we saw week 0 in college football. It's kind of ugly. The weather, who the hell knows? Could be sloppy, could be rainy. It feels like it's always raining over there in the UK. Pittsburgh defense has been pretty good last week. They forced 5 turnovers. Their run defense has been weak. Carson Wentz also a quarterback. Kind of a weird thing. You know, Reichard's a fine start. I wouldn't expect a whole lot from him. I think it's a weird spot. I don't necessarily trust international games. Low scoring, ugly. I don't know what the kicking conditions are going to look like. Sloppy, grassy field. Who the hell knows? So if you can sit Reichard, I would. But Reichard's been excellent this season. One of the best kickers. And a guy that I really wouldn't want to cut if I have him because of how good he's been at home, especially with this offense taking a bit of a step back with J.J. McCarthy, and now a little bit forward again with Carson Wentz. So I think we found a really sweet spot for where Reichard could be kicking a bunch of field goals this year. But this week, Not a great matchup, not a great situation, but he's a fine start if you don't want to risk losing one of the better kickers in the league. Okay, Chad Ryland of the Arizona Cardinals. They're playing Thursday night. They're hosting the Seattle Seahawks, and the Seattle defense has been one of the best defenses in football. And this Cardinals offense has been really lackluster. Seems like they struggle to score 20 points pretty much every week. I mean, it's really tough scenes for them. Ryland's a pretty decent kicker, but he's had some up and down this year. I'm just going to put him in the if you have to category. If there's not much out there, if you're in a deeper league, you kind of have Ryland thinking that, he's a guy who's solid. I just really wouldn't want to play him too much this week unless you have to in deeper formats. Seattle, getting stops could help you kicking some field goals. I just worry that this Cardinals offense could be stuck in another 21-10 game, and the Cardinals score 10 points and you get 4 from your kicker. So try and avoid Ryland this week. Okay, Riley Patterson of the Miami Dolphins taking on the Jets on Monday Night Football, coming off a long break, but this Dolphins team, man, has been really, really bad. I just don't want to take the risk here. There's got to be a better kicker out there. Do not start really anybody for the Miami Dolphins unless his name is Devon AHA, and I just don't want to deal with that. Tua, who the hell knows? DJ Mikey Mike, not great. I'm going to try and avoid all of that heading into week 4. Okay, kind of a double dip here for the New York Giants. Graham Gano, normally their kicker. He was injured before warmups last week, did come out, did kick a field goal. They did sign Younghoe Koo to their practice squad, the Giants. So I'm not risking it with either of these Giants kickers on top of they're playing it. The Los Angeles Chargers, they're at home, which is nice, but this Chargers defense is for real. Koo obviously had some major kicking problems. Gano injured. He's been fine this year. Jackson Dart starting on offense can't be any worse than Russell Wilson, but I'm just going to avoid any Giants kickers this week. Okay, another one for our bench them category, Ryan Fitzgerald of the Carolina Panthers. Look, Carolina, great game last week against Atlanta. Taking on New England. New England, kind of an okay defense. They haven't been great, but they haven't been bad. Should be getting Gonzalez back in the secondary. That should be a boost. I just can't trust this Panthers team yet. They're on the road. They've been really bad 2 of their 3 games this season. So I'm just going to avoid everything. Sit Ryan Fitzgerald. There's definitely better options out there for you. Okay, our from zero to hero, my man Szmyt did not Szmyt his pants. Takes a huge 55-yard field goal to knock out the Green Bay Packers. But they're going to take on the Detroit Lions. I don't know what this Browns offense is going to look like, and we're starting to see the Lions start to hum. They had a monster Monday night performance after a big week 2 against the Bears, and they're in Detroit, and this thing about this Lions team is they're only iffy maybe on the road or outdoors. They are a absolute unit at home on that turf. Now, it's a good place to kick. I just don't know what we're going to see from this Browns offense. They're running the football now with Quinshon Judkins, but you just really can't run the ball against Detroit. So as much as you'd like to see a redemption story for our guy Szmyt, I'm going to go ahead and bench him this week. I just don't trust the Browns to give us back-to-back good performances. Really good defense. I think they're in for a letdown this week against the Lions. And you know what? I'm a little concerned about this Browns offense against Detroit this week, so I'm heading straight on over to Underdog. Andre Szmyt, under 1.5 extra points made. I find it hard to see the Browns getting into the end zone twice. So if you guys are new to Underdog, make sure you sign up using the link down below. Promo code THECATCH. You're going to get a free pick 'em for week 4. Take that pick 'em. Take Andre Szmyt under 1.5 extra points made. And if both hit, you're going to automatically double your cash entry. And on top of that, Underdog is giving all new users who deposit with promo code THECATCH a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. As soon as you play $5 on Underdog, they're automatically going to give you an additional $50 to use towards week 4. Again, new users signing up with the promo code THECATCH, and let's bring home that dub in week 4. Okay, Will Lutz of the Denver Broncos, kind of a disappointing season so far for Denver, especially on offense. They really haven't found their footing quite yet, but they are going home. They are taking on the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football. So this probably should be a high-scoring affair. The Bengals defense is really, really bad. Plus, the offense doesn't seem great without Joe Burrow either. Tons of turnovers. I think Lutz is a fine start in this week. The problem is Sean Payton just worries me. Who the hell knows what Sean Payton's going to do? Is he going to kick field goals? Is he going to go for it? I just don't know. Trying to force the issue here. Lutz is fine. He's reliable. Not a super high ceiling. Usually a pretty safe floor. Probably going to get at least one field goal and a couple of extra points out of him. Okay, Jason Myers of the Seattle Seahawks playing Thursday at Arizona. And this Seahawks offense has been fine. Sam Darnold's been really efficient. They run the ball pretty well out there behind a great defense. That's kind of the combo you want to have. Thursday night games, again, weird in the division on the road. Not the most ideal situation, but you know what? I think Myers is a fine start this week. The Seahawks have proven enough to me that they're going to be able to move the football relatively well, maybe not get as many touchdowns as you like, so field goal attempts are what we're talking about. Not super far kicks, not a really high end for those 50-plus yarders, but consistency, 2 or 3 field goals, I think should be very doable for Jason Myers this week. Okay, Evan Money McPherson, one of the better kickers in the league, Mr. Reliable, but this Bengals offense is dreadful. Now, I think we're going to get a better performance out of them this week, but it is another tough spot going to Denver to take on the Broncos on Monday night. If you have to play McPherson, if you think, his value's up because this Bengals offense will start getting going and they aren't going to score touchdowns, but they're going to get a lot of field goal attempts, potentially you want to hang on to him. I just wouldn't really want to play him this week. If you have to play him, you can because he is a very reliable kicker. I'm just not sure what we're going to see from the offense with Cincinnati. Very concerning after last week, but I'm not ready to completely pull the plug on them after just one bad performance without Joe Burrow. Okay, Chase McLaughlin, a game winner after getting demoted from the start of every week. He's had a rough go to the season, but a monster week last week. Really tough spot, though. They're taking on the Eagles. The Eagles, one of the best teams in football, and their defense has been pretty good this year. They did get carved up a bit in the first half, but 2 blocked field goals last week has me a little concerned here. I think McLaughlin is a fine start. He's been, up and down. He was one of the most reliable kickers last year. Hopefully he found something with that game winner again this week. But you know what? Not worth a super high play. I just worried about this really good defense. And now I'm kind of scared. Like, are the Eagles just block kick masters? Who knows? I'm sure they're going to be focused on that. But this could be an ugly game. A lot of 4th downs maybe. Baker and the Buccaneers getting ultra aggressive because this is a good team. McLaughlin, a fine start, but maybe temper expectations after a monster week 3. Santos of the Chicago Bears. Bears coming off their best offensive performance maybe ever. I don't know. It's the Bears. They never have offense. But a good week against the Cowboys. They're taking on Las Vegas. Vegas's defense finally broke last week. They've been pretty good the first 2 weeks, but they were bad against Washington. Gave up some big chunk plays for touchdowns. I'm just going to put Santos in the if you have to category. It is in Vegas, so that helps. It's an indoor stadium, controlled climate, but it's not the best kicking stadium because of the field situation there. So if you have to, I really wouldn't play Santos, but you never know what the kicking situation looks like for people out there. Matt Prater of the Buffalo Bills taking on the New Orleans Saints in Buffalo. And after a shankopotamus kick from Prater that maybe almost cost the Bills, put them in a little bit of jeopardy there, I love Matt Prater this week. I think he's going to have a nice bounce back week. They're playing the Saints. This is not a good football team. And this is a team that the Bills are not going to be ultra aggressive against. They're not going to go out there and go for every 4th down, feeling like they have to score touchdowns. They're just going to take their points, kick the field goals, keep rolling it on. And worst case scenario, the Bills are putting up 7 touchdowns this week because the Saints team was awful against Seattle. It spiraled. Do I think they bounce back? Maybe, but the travel, again, New Orleans, pretty far south, all the way up to the Pacific Northwest, back home, now back out to Buffalo. It's a lot of travel. I worry about the travel. I keep note of this. So I'm loving Matt Prater in a nice bounce back spot. After a letdown on Thursday against the Dolphins, I think he has a huge week 4 for us. Okay, Andy Borregales of the New England Patriots. They're taking on the Panthers. I'm going to put him in the if you have to category. Panthers defense is pretty bad, even though they put on a clinic last week against Michael Penix. I'm just not 100% sure what this Patriots offense is trying to do. Like, I like Drake May, but they make some bad plays. They can't really run the football. It's kind of weird in New England. I'll put him in the if you have to category because there is some upside playing against a bad defense. Maybe the Patriots have a breakout offensive performance, but overall, kind of hesitant so far with this New England team. Put him in the if you have to category. not worth a bench, but maybe if you want to roll the dice, need a major upside at kicker, you go with a guy like Andy. All right, Fairbairn of the Houston Texans, demoted, super reliable, but this Texans offense is just so dreadful. I just can't in good conscience put him in a start every week because I just don't know if the Texans are even going to score points. They do have a very good matchup this week against the Tennessee Titans, a team that looked like they were going to have a good defense, but they aren't very good. The offense turns the ball over a ton, which is nice because this Texans defense is one of the best units in the NFL, so they could get after young Cam Ward, who I do still like. It's just been a really tough sled to begin his NFL career on the defense he's faced. I think he's a fine start this week, not worth a cut yet. If they don't do anything against this Tennessee defense and their defense can't generate anything against this bad Tennessee offense, I am just going to sell all my Houston Texans players besides Nico Collins. But for right now, Fairbairn, a fine start this week. It's just very concerning what we've seen from this Houston team. Blake Grupe of the New Orleans Saints. The Saints offense hasn't been atrocious, man. They've moved the football. They have gotten some points, and it's usually, maybe in garbage time. But taking on the Bills, don't want to deal with it. Bills defense has been actually decent this year. They weren't good week 1, but they've been fine. Don't play anybody, really. Not worth the risk. There's better kickers out there for you. Don't want to touch it for a bad team versus a good team. This is literally team 32 versus team number 1 in my power rankings. So we'll see how that goes for the New Orleans Saints. Okay, Parker Romo of the Atlanta Falcons gets signed to Atlanta. Huge Sunday night performance, and then immediately proceeds to miss 2 field goals against the Panthers. I'm going to put him in the if you have to category. They are taking on the Commanders, but are we sure Michael Penix is a guy 0-4 against teams that have scored more than 7 points against him? Really bad week from him. This Falcons are already firing offensive coaches here. They can't get any sort of rhythm or consistency. I mean, if you have to, weird leagues, you picked them up because you drafted Koo. There's not really anybody else better out there. Could be fine. Washington's defense did give up a ton of big plays last week against Vegas, even though it was in garbage time. I'm just worried. Maybe he's in his head. There's a reason why he's available. It's hard to find kickers in this league. I'm going to put Romo in the if you have to category this week. Okay, same thing goes for Matt Gay, backup quarterback, Marcus Mariota coming in. This Falcons defense was, not great last week, but they had a great week 2 performance against Minnesota, and they were pretty solid against Tampa Bay until the last drive there. So they do get some stops. They are in Atlanta, so it's an indoors. It's a nice place to kick. He's a fine start. I just want to see what the quarterback situation is. If it's Mariota, I feel like that leans a little bit maybe better towards Gay. If it's Daniels, probably not. You don't know what the knee's going to look like. Can he run as much? Is he going to be as mobile? Field goals on the table here. Just want to see more from this Commanders team. So if you have to, you can. I would prefer to avoid Matt Gay in week 4. Okay, Joey Slye of the Tennessee Titans did finally miss some kicks last week. The long kicks, awful coach management, not necessarily all on him, but he's been really solid for us so far this season. Tennessee has not gotten touchdowns. They've been getting field goals. Now this is a brutal matchup. They're taking on the Houston Texans. I think he's a fine start here, maybe towards the bottom end. This could be a tough week for the offense, i.e. they don't even get into field goal range really against Houston. But if they do, he's going to be kicking those field goals. They're not going to be scoring touchdowns against this Texans defense. So maybe a lower floor for us this week, but a high upside ceiling, kind of a big variable this week for Joey Slye. All right, Josh Karty of the LA Rams taking on the Indianapolis Colts. Maybe the best team in football. How about those Colts? But after 2 blocked field goals last week, I'm just going to avoid this. Not necessarily his fault, but there's some special teams issues on the protection. Everybody's got tape on it. I'm sure they're going to address it this week, but it's not worth the risk for me. You don't want to have those blocks, taking those negatives for your team. So go ahead and bench Karty this week until the Rams show us that they've actually fixed their protection and they can operate a field goal attempt. All right, Nick Folk of the New York Jets. They're taking on the Miami Dolphins on Monday night. It is Tyrod Taylor this week at quarterback for them. The Jets are just not good, man. They've been up and down. I don't know what to do with the Jets. If you have to start Nick Folk, you can start him. He's had some big kicks this year from distance. Miami's not very good, their defense in particular, so the Jets could have some success moving the football. Just a little too scary for me this week in fantasy. Nick Folk, if you have to, because there is some distance kicks, and maybe the Jets found something. Can we ever trust the Jets? No. All right, Eddie Pinero of the San Francisco 49ers, game winner last week. Big time for him on his new team. You love to see it. They're taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville's defense been pretty good this year. Now, Mac Jones a little banged up, looking like Brock Purdy's going to play, but if Brock Purdy and Mac Jones are out, this is an easy bench. Bench Pinero. I'm telling you right now, if Purdy and Mac Jones aren't playing, bench him. I don't even know who their third quarterback is. It's like Adrian Gonzalez. It's like Nebraska Gonzalez. Who knows? But if you get Brock Purdy, if you get Mac Jones out there, I think this is a fine start. I think this offense, maybe struggles to get touchdowns, but they can move the football between the 40s, and that's what you want to see. Get into that field goal range, get stopped in the red zone. Jacksonville's defense has been pretty solid. Christian McCaffrey's having a great season so far. Ricky Pearsall's emerged. So even with all the injuries, I do like this 49ers team still. Just worry about the quarterback situation, monitor it, but if he doesn't play, you got Pinero out there. Think he's more than a fine start. Several field goal attempts definitely on the table with competency at quarterback. Okay, and finally, Daniel Carlson of the Las Vegas Raiders. They're taking on the Bears. This Bears defense isn't very good, but I don't know what I'm going to get out of this Vegas team. Geno Smith's been so up and down this year. They can't run the football. Have the Bears figured it out? Got a little juice. If you have to play Carlson, he's at home. I prefer a kicker at home, even if it is kind of a weird place to kick. But I would kind of avoid it. I want to see more consistency from Las Vegas. There could be some upside with this Bears defense not being the best. I think they're bad probably if we were really thinking about it. So could be some opportunities for us this week if you have Carlson. Just kind of something I would avoid. I feel like there's some better matchups, some safer plays for you out there in week 4. And that's going to do it for us this week. Let me know down in the comments below any of your kicker questions we're going to be going through. We're here to answer anything. If you haven't already, drop a quick like on this video, subscribe to the channel. We got all the fantasy football content you guys could ever want throughout the week. Your must starts at quarterback, tight end, running back, wide receiver, defenses for every single matchup, your waiver wire ads, your streams, guys you should trade for. We got it all here, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of the content. Check out the links down below. Again, like, subscribe, and share. We'll see y'all tomorrow.